and this week's
Collect your heroes.
Superhero Spotlight is the dimension of Earth 2.
Wow.
So this was spurred on by The Flash visiting Earth 2 in this week's episode of the Flash series. So they've been messing around with Earth 2 all season long on the Flash TV show. But Earth 2 is old as hell. Like it is, if I may put a number on it, it's 55 years old.
Oh.
Technically, Earth 2 is as old as DC Comics itself because Earth 2 is in Action Comics #1, the first Superman comic, because that's where it takes place.
Really? What?
Yeah, because that's classic Superman, who is on Earth 2, so this is the dimension of Earth 2. But if you're talking about when the concept of Earth 2 began, that is in Flash 123 from 1961, called The Flash of Two Worlds, which was also the name of the season premiere of Flash in season 2 as well. And it had numerous references to it. But the short version is that it was created by Gardner Fox and
Guy Gardner.
Wow, sounds like a superhero.
Yeah, but instead he was just a classic Silver Age writer for DC. But the concept was just a functional thing when it started. So for this, we really got to go way back in DC history. Like I said, began with Action Comics, and then DC decided that they wanted to have all these superheroes they were publishing along with Superman start meeting up. Batman and Superman rarely did, but they sometimes did, and then they created this book called All-Star Squadron that brought together the characters Hawkman, Flash, Wonder Woman, the Green Lantern, Atom, Hourman, all these classic 40s dudes who would often be fighting, like they fought in World War II. They're very tied to World War II. Then in the 50s comes the death of the comic books, or the almost death of comic books as a medium entirely, where it was the seduction of the innocent part, where they got in the introduction of the Comic Code Authority. Marvel almost died, or the company that would be Marvel pretty much almost shuttered. DC did a little better, but they kind of just cut back to Superman and Batman and just side books for them. And every other superhero pretty much disappeared. Cut to 1956. This was only a few years after the disappearance of most of the famous superheroes in DC. And showcase number 8 is when they decide, let's try a new Flash. Let's just make up a more sci-fi Flash instead of magic. Let's just make up this new science fiction guy who's the Flash. Barry Allen is his name, and he'll get his powers from science fiction. And we won't mention, they thought it was a one-off, so they make no mention of the Flash, Jay Garrick, who was the original one.
Died of Jay Garrick's disease.
And no, he still lived. He still lived. And so that's when he came back. They'd also suggested that the comic books, at first they were like, oh no, Barry Allen reads the comic books that Jay Garrick stars in, which was a really weird way to go. But then by 123, they'd find out that if Barry Allen vibrated just right, he would phase into another universe and meet Jay Garrick. And he would be in Earth 2, which is where all those other stories previously happened.
Wow.
In Earth 1, from that point on, was where superheroes had just appeared. And they had just come in and they had not participated in World War II. While meanwhile, in Earth 2, they had participated in World War II, including Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman.
And they solved World War II immediately.
Somehow, no. You would think they would. There's a lot of explanations for that, but the short version, no, they did not.
Right.
But so that was where they had to make this mark. And then by 1963, the Earth 2 stuff became so popular in the Flash books, they decided, well, screw it. Let's just have the Justice League meet the Justice Society. And so that was in Justice League number 21. It's this very famous cover of the old JSA being summoned from a crystal ball by the Justice League, who are all holding hands. Like it's a kind of a cornball image, but sweet too.
When was this around?
This was 1963. At this point, like Hulk was just appearing in Marvel too. So the Silver Age boom is on big time.
It was kind of started by Flash, I guess.
Yeah, so if you're a DC fan, Flash is definitely where the Silver Age began, because once Flash was successful in his new book, then they're like, well, what if we brought back Hawkman? What if we brought back Green Lantern?
Right.
What if we... And that also re-energized the Superman and Batman books. Though they were in a sticky position with Superman and Batman, and to a lesser extent Wonder Woman, because they never stopped publishing. So they had to just make an arbitrary point of saying, okay, all of these to this issue were Earth 2 Superman and Batman. All of them to past then are Earth 1, Superman, and Batman. And so that's how you have this delineation of Earth 2 Superman is Kal-El with the letter L, not EL, which was the original style for it. And he worked at the Daily Star, not the Daily Planet, which was also something he did in his earliest books. While meanwhile, Batman, that's the other thing. They all get to age because it's very fixed in time, and that was something that Earth 2 kind of allowed them to do. They had to have fought in World War II. And unlike with... In Marvel, they deal with it by Captain America got frozen in time.
Right.
Human Torch is a robot, and Namor doesn't age. Boom. Now we've fixed...
Right.
We fixed most of our major 1940s characters. But in DC, they couldn't do that. So...
And then he was frozen again in the 90s.
Yeah, so now for Superman... Yeah, I guess... Side note, Captain America now would have been unfrozen after 9/11. Honestly, when we were pretty far into, we were in the second Bush administration almost when he got taken out of ice.
Yeah.
Now, just by the moving timelines of comics, they have Superman and Batman are the first heroes, and they are members of the Justice Society and friends with the Justice Society. Superman gets old. It allows the DC writers to have finality to stories because they're the side people, but they still are oh, the original Superman married Lois Lane. And he just did. It's not undone. It's not an imaginary story. They just are married. And same with Batman gets too old to be Batman. So Bruce Wayne becomes the police commissioner of Gotham City. Catwoman is reformed, and they get married and have kids.
Jeez.
And so...
Kittens.
At least one kid. No, one kid, Dave.
Oh.
That would be Huntress, Kathy Kane.
Really?
Yes. So that also brings in what Earth 2 is about. Not only did Earth 2 open them up to a yearly summer crossover event they do with Justice Society and Justice League. It would be their visit to Earth 2. They wouldn't visit Earth 2 all that often, but they did in this case in summer where... That's when they would meet the newer heroes from the Earth 2 as well. It's where we got characters like Jade, Atom Smasher, Power Girl, Huntress, Obsidian, and others. And they were all Earth 2 characters that then just came into DC in the 70s. And they had more tude. Usually they had more tude because they're like, I'm a teenager, grew up with superhero parents. I don't need to listen to you, Superman. I don't need to listen to you, Superman. Stuff like that. And so that's also where it's, strangely enough, it's where Black Canary and Green Arrow got together. It was Earth 2 Black Canary fell in love with an Earth 1 Green Arrow, which was a very strange connection for two of them. But there were other different changes between Earth 2 and Earth 1.
Isn't that against the law?
Other than... she could be his sister from another dimension. Who knows? There were a lot of differences between Earth 2 and Earth 1. That on Earth 2, they had an Atlantis. Atlantis was just a place you could visit,
right.
Which was something they put into the newest episode of The Flash. Somebody says, oh, I got tickets to go to Atlantis. I always wanted to visit there. And it totally fits in with that universe.
Yeah.
And, there's extra cities in Mexico and stuff, and they say, oh, this one place blew up, or this thing happened in World War II. All these things happened in World War II that are, meanwhile, the Justice in the Earth 1 world, World War II happened the way we remember World War II happening, basically, because, with some changes, but because superheroes were never around until then. And it also, this was something DC was always very interested in, that Superman has to be the first hero. They want him to be the first hero. And Earth 2 and 1 allow that without aging Superman.
Right. You
can have a Superman that was the first hero on Earth 2, who fought in World War II, and then you can have the Earth 1, who never had World War II adventures and just showed up 10 years ago or whatever.
Right.
And is the Earth 1 Superman. Now, that all sounded pretty confusing, though, this Earth 1 and Earth 2
I
stuff.
think it can boil down to, there are just two Earths. One of them has a slightly different timeline where heroes showed up 30 years sooner than they did in the other one. And for all intents and purposes, we are Earth 1. And Earth 2 is the other.
Well, the problem came because the more they wrote Earth 1 stories, or Earth 2 stories, the more other Earths they introduced as well to spice it up. It started with Crisis on Two Earths. That was the name of their first crossover. Into the 70s, you get Crisis on Multiple Earths. They introduced Earth 3, Earth S, where the Shazam characters live.
Earth the Kit.
Damn it! I was gonna
where Batman 66 happens. Exactly. It's the multiverse expands and expands and expands into the 70s, into the early 80s, where they even have a regular Justice Society book, which then spins off into Infinity Inc., which is where their attitudinal 90s children are having adventures with mohawks and worried if they're gay and all these things. Like, that's what happens in Infinity Inc. And it gets really confusing. So confusing to the point we get to where in any DC history you have to touch on this because it changed everybody. But this one especially, Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1985 and 86. And so when they did that book, short version is they killed every universe and there was only one left. And there was only one world because they thought, oh, well, it confuses everybody to have too many worlds. Earth 2 and all the other Earths that followed it gotta go. So they kill them all off. But the way the story worked was they killed off every planet of the old planets were dead except 5 at the end. And then those 5 got shoved together into one, which explained why there would be remnants of Earth 2 around. Then it gets really complicated because writers want to keep the World War II Justice Society characters. They want them to exist, especially so their kids can exist now on the new single Earth. But to do that, they have to break the rule of Superman's not the first superhero. And so instead, the Justice Society, but without Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman, fought in World War II and then disappeared. And then there was a quiet time into the second heroic age started with the premiere of Superman. So Superman technically started a heroic age, and there's just a clear delineation between the superheroes of the 40s and the superheroes of now in the 80s. And meanwhile, Earth 2 is dead. They started trying to bring it back as much as they could. Every new writer would come on who grew up with Earth 2 that like, well, what if we brought back this guy? What if we brought back this guy? And the Justice Society was literally stuck in purgatory. Like they were stuck in the realm of purgatory, and when freed from it, they were young again. And they're like, now we can have adventures in the 90s, yay! And
is this the one? Which is the one where Superman Prime is like punching holes through reality?
That's in 10 years.
Okay,
but it'll feel like 10 years by the time we get there. But there's no Earth 2. They try to introduce a thing called Hyper Time, but there's still no Earth 2 at that point. The Hyper Time tries to explain away why there's different universes. Hyper Time just is Earth 2, and they explain that it kind of exists, but they still have to go like, but it's not really Earth 2. Then to Infinite Crisis.
Yes.
So at the end of Crisis on Infinite Earth, as a way to be, I guess, honoring of legacy, you'd say, they decide we can't kill off the original Superman and the original Lois Lane. They are saved. And they're saved by Earth 3, Alexander Luthor Jr. And they teleport to a magical realm, heaven, basically. The 4 of them just go to heaven. And they hang out there watching the rest of the post-crisis world. But Alexander Luthor is not satisfied with that and decides he's going to remake the multiverse. And he's going to do that by tearing apart everything that there is now. And he does remake Earth 2 in that book, but nobody's on it. Like, because all the Earth 2 people are dead. The only Earth 2 people that are transported to it are the Justice Society and Superman and Lois Lane, because they're the only Earth 2 people that still exist. But at that point, though, they got back their memories. The Justice Society remembered Earth 2 and all their Earth 2 adventures.
This is now in the 2000s?
This is 2005.
Yeah, okay.
When Infinite Crisis is over, the original Superman and Lois Lane are dead, and that is it. They're cut off like old Earth 2 as we knew it, gone forever, seemingly. They've rebuilt a new Earth 2, though, in the post-Infinite Crisis world, but it's totally different. It's not the Earth 2 that the Justice Society remembers when they visit it, but it still is an it's definitely different from the regular Earth. Then, even more confusingly, we get to Flashpoint, which reset everything again into the new 52.
Yes.
And there is an Earth 2 there, which was created by James Robinson. He was the creator of Earth 2. So, New 52, Dave, you've read it as well. You remember in the Justice League origin story, Darkseid invades and would have killed everybody, but the Justice League stops him. On Earth 2, which was very similar to Earth 1 at one point, this time when Darkseid comes in, he destroys a lot more stuff. He is beaten back, but he kills Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. And so the world has to be rebuilt by new heroes in that world. And that is when they introduce a new Justice Society, though, who had a lot of similar members like The Flash, Jay Garrick, Green Lantern is Alan Scott, who's gay in this universe. and multiple other like Justice Society classic characters. And so it was a neat starting point of, well, what do you do when the three biggest heroes are gone?
Right.
And it also introduced classic versions of Huntress and Power Girl, who went over into the regular DC universe as well, onto Earth 1. Unfortunately for Earth 2, its success was too much for it. Because DC seemed to go like, oh, this one book is popular. What if you had 3? And one of them was weekly. And just from overexposure, people just stopped reading it, and it lost.
Just like Adventures in this new Earth 2?
Yeah, it was just a ton through the Earth 2, but it was just overwhelming, and the quality, in my opinion, went down a lot. And so, by the end of it, they're just like, you know what? Fuck it, blow it up. Darkseid blows up Earth 2. It's dead. There's no Earth 2, and that leads to last year's Convergence. And so, in that massive crossover,
and the crossover I have planned for August.
Yeah, who knows what'll happen after that. But in that massive crossover, they bring back the multiverse again and Earth 2 again, but it is the classic Earth 2. They basically say, Crisis on Infinite Earths does happen, but now everything that is back from that. And so the Earth 2 that was destroyed in 1985 is now back to where it was beforehand. Okay. And so everything, it was basically, Convergence ends with DC saying everything counts, including Earth 2, where all those classic stories in the 40s, 50s, the 30s and 40s and the 70s happened, and they're not erased. And so if they wanted to revisit them, they could. It'd be easy. They're not going to anytime soon. And meanwhile, they're left with the leftovers of what was Earth 2. They then get a whole new planet that they live on. And so it's like Earth 47 or whatever. But the Earth, anyway, so now Earth 2, as we remember it, is back. But it was the beginning of a whole multiverse thing. It's where they got to tell more interesting stories, where things could really happen to Batman and Superman, where Batman could die of old age,
right?
Because time just kept moving forward, and it offered a lot more storytelling.
It was also like a meta answer for all of DC's Elseworlds stuff. Yeah, that was always really interesting. Of like, what if Batman took place during like the gas lamp era, and what if Superman was a Frankenstein's monster, or what if he landed here or there instead of Kansas? Like they could do a lot of stuff, but then also say, well, it all kind of counts because it's the multiverse.
Everything counts.
Does this stuff ever pop up in like the animated shows, or?
Well, yes and no, Dave.
Because it seems like something that would be too complicated to explain in the non-written word.
I remember,
like especially like movies like that. Like,
well, I remember there was a Justice League cartoon where they met like the evil versions of themselves.
So sort of, yeah. So the problem with the animation, Dave, the animation never really dealt with Earth 2 because Earth 2 didn't exist when they were most popular. From the early 90s into the mid 2000s, there was no multiverse in the comics, and they were very strict of like, no, and there's definitely no multiverse in the cartoons either. If we don't have it in the comics, we're definitely not putting it in the cartoons or the movies or Smallville or whatever.
Right.
There was time travel, and they did have alternate dimensions, and so like they did meet the Justice Lords on the Justice League show. They were from an alternate timeline where the Justice League went evil. And they did a similar thing where they couldn't meet the Justice Society on the Justice League show, but they did get to meet heroes from the 40s who were all the different analogs to Justice League. And you could just, in your mind, just tell yourself, oh, that's Earth 2 Green Lantern, that's Earth 2 Flash. They just can't call them that. And it was just a rule of, no, there's no Earth 2 in the DC animated universe. You're not allowed to do it.
So the Flash is like the first time they're literally calling it Earth 2?
Yeah, when it was really exciting for me in the first episode of in the start of season 2 for them to say like, no, see here draws a circle. This is Earth 1, draws a circle. That's Earth 2.
Yeah, they straight up say it, and then this episode's also kind of brought on by like the Supergirl cameo that was announced.
Yeah,
where that is on the meta level again. That's two networks. In like what is it? It's CW and CBS, and they're going to have some kind of crossover. It's not like Arrow and Flash having a shared universe or Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah, those can't take place in the same universe as one where Superman does. Like it doesn't happen. So.
And so what this does is this like lets DC do something they can have over Marvel and it can work for them. And it almost like they could spin this and look really smart after the fact of being like, oh no, all these weird different things we have going on. Like, why is Gotham connected to nothing, and why is this connected to, why is Flash in his own thing, but then there's going to be a Flash in the movie, and there's this Batman, blah, 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 and then Supergirl's on CBS. It's like, no. It's the multiverse. Yeah. All of this is actually happening, and Marvel can't really do that.
Making the TV multiverse work, like it's the perfect. It is kind of perfect, honestly. Yeah. Like he could meet Dean Cain's Superman from Adventures of Lois and Clark.
Yeah, you could have Dean Cain cash a check and show up on literally any of these shows and be like, "Yeah, I used to be Superman, and now I'm not. Great, here's your $200. I don't care." Yeah,
exactly. And so I really like that, and they've gone now to Earth 2 on Flash. This week they've spent a long time in this week's episode.
I'm still really, like, of all the shows that are out, Flash is my favorite.
No, I think it's got the best writing and characters. The actors are the best. I really like the design of Earth 2 on the Flash.
Yeah, it's very 1940s.
Yeah, it's so, like, pneumatic, but they've got smartphones. But then they'll pull out, like, a 6-shooter, like, oh, it's a cop, time to get out my weapon.
Yeah,
like,
it reminds me a lot of Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we have cars, and it's kind of perpetually stuck in the 40s, but we still have computers. They're gigantic boxes, but like we have stuff we shouldn't, and it's cool.
And that they have like everybody is super well dressed. It also gives me a feel of like BioShock. Like, just the idea
does have that Rapture feel.
Yeah, the 40s never stopped. The 40s style never stopped. Like the Beatles didn't show up and ruin hats or whatever. Like everybody wears a hat. They all go to gin joints and listen to their favorite
jazz and all the civil rights that come with it.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's Earth 2 Explained. I hope you learned a lot in this week's
cross your fingers.
Your hero.
Superhero Spotlight.
Yay!
Yeah.